Friends and members of OCPAC, welcome to our meeting today. It's a blustery day. I think someone unwound a tornado and put it in a straight line across the state today. Well, in just a moment, we will ask the Lord's blessing. But let me orient you a little bit before that. Right after we pray, we will be pledging allegiance to this little flag right here. And I just want to point out that we now have it in proper perspective. This is the flag that represents individual rights and sovereignty as given to us by God. We then give our states some power on our behalf, and then they give a little bit of power to the federal government on the state's behalf. This is the proper perspective. We'll pledge to that flag shortly. We will be led in the pledge by retired Chief Master Sergeant Jerome Montgomery. Before we do that, though, I have asked OCPAC member Travis Botaw to lead us in prayer and talk to the Lord of us all. Please stand.
Let's pray. Father, we come to you in Jesus' name, thanking you for today, for the country we live in that's free, and we can assemble as free men and women. Lord, we stop and recognize Veterans Day today and thank you for the many veterans and many that are represented here in this meeting today. We thank you for their service. Many have died and shed their blood on our behalf. Well, I lift up Steve Russell as he brings his comments from Washington to us, and ask you to bless him and strengthen him as he talks to us. Thank you now for this food, and ask you to strengthen our bodies with it in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
And salute, pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Please be seated and answer the telephone. All right, so let's see. I saw Logan County Commissioner Mike Pearson come in. Where are you, Mike Pearson? There he is. Thank you, sir, for your service. Do we have any other elected officials here with us today other than our speaker? Okay, do we have any other candidates who would like to give us an update on your campaign? You may do this right now. Going once, going twice. Okay, we're on to announcements. Last night, there was a very big political event, a really important political event. And so let's talk for a moment about who the winner was and all of that. So it was Oklahoma Senate Seat 34, and the winner was David McClain. Yes! Now let me give you a little background on this race. David McClain came before our group and was interviewed. We endorsed him and we supported him financially. We wanted him to win that race. Very solid, good conservative candidate. And so the results are in. He received 906 votes. The next closest vote getter was 836 votes, so he won by 60 votes, my friends. 60 votes. That was against John Ferry, who was the chamber's pick. He was their golden boy, and he had more money than David, and David slew Goliath. Now here's what makes this really fun. This Senate seat is the Owasso Senate seat. This is Randy Brogdon's stomping ground. It was the chamber that smashed him out of the GOP leadership. And look who got the final poke in the eye.
Praise the Lord.
We are so excited that David McClain is going to run. So our finance committee, with the dollars that you have given us from your membership dues, we're going to look at that race, and we will probably help David again in the general election. We need more guys like that at the Capitol who will vote the right way for state sovereignty and all the things that we care about. So while I'm talking about, here's another little thing that I pointed out before. Consider this, guys. 60 people. He won by 60 people. 60 people decided who was going to represent how many? 72,000. 72,000 people will be represented by the choice of 60 people. Something's wrong with this system. We do not have real representative government. But at least we can all work and make a difference. When that few people are voting, our dollars have power. And that works for us. All right, speaking of OCPAC and our influence, this is November, so you're going to start hearing from me each week now about memberships. We need you to re-up for 2016 by the end of this calendar year. Some of you will get these in the mail, but we have them every week on our table. please join and be a member again. Consider being a rhino hunter or an elephant provider, as we need to have a big war chest to help candidates like David McClain get elected. We all do this as a volunteer. I don't get paid to do this. I do this because I care about freedom for our people right here. They can do whatever they want in Massachusetts, but I want our people to be free. And so that money, your membership dues, help these candidates. And we need you to join and bring your friends to join, get them out of the pew, get them involved, okay? Because we're electing people to represent them whether they're engaged or not. So let's get them to help us out. We have new membership cards. You don't have to be a member to get one of these cards, but this is something you can carry in your billfold and you can share with a friend. It has our mission statement on there. It says we support conservative constitutional candidates who want smaller government, more freedom, and we support Judeo-Christian values. So it has what we're for on it. And on the back side, it has the things that we're against. This card says that it's open season on rhinos, neocons, socialists, communists, demon rats, not Democrats, demon rats, chambercrats, educrats, and fascists. For a $5 contribution, you can have one of these and put it in your wallet. If you want to pass them out like candy to your friends, then we'll let you have them for what did we say, $3 for, if you want to get 5 or more. So these are on the table along with membership cards. We also have our standard fare, our books that we want you to read, about sovereignty, about the doctrine of the lesser magistrate, get those. Let's see, what else? Okay. Do we have any other announcements at this time? Harvey Porter. Porter Davis, come up here. While he's coming up here, I will point out that while we had 906 vote for David McClain, 836 for his opponent, on the Democrat side, only 624 people showed up to vote on the Democrat side. So we're going to get this seat. So this is a really, really good opportunity.
Thank you. That margin was even thinner. 31 of those 60 had voted for Perry. Perry would have won.
That's true. That's a good point.
Yes. We're having Precinct 111 meeting next Tuesday night. You can get the live cast of it at okgrassrootsproject.com. And love to have you on there. We're starting to roll forward and doing this as an example for the rest of the state. So we'd love to have you all start up meetings in your own precincts. Thank you.
All right. I think we're about ready to get to our speaker. I understand that Congressman Russell is going to do a lot of Q&A today. I know some of you have questions. So if you have a question, when he's ready for that, I want you to line up right here, and we'll have you ask the question right here on the microphone so that it's recorded and everyone can hear it. And then you can take off, and then it'll be the next person up until we run out of time. And I'll get to ask the first question, of course. And so if you all read my newsletter today or this weekend, I am of the opinion that not much good comes out of Washington. It's helpful to the people here. We're glad that you came out of Washington to come back and visit us. And I asked Mr. Russell if he had been inoculated against the zombie apocalypse virus, and he said, because he can't carry weapons in D.C., yes, he's been inoculated. So I still wouldn't let him bite you today, because he's been in D.C., but I think it's safe to have him here for the next hour. So with that introduction, Congressman Russell, the Speaker, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm not coming out of Washington. I commute to Washington. I live in Oklahoma, and it's great to represent all of you. I had a couple of interesting things that we've seen develop. There was the National Defense Authorization where we refused to back down on the Guantanamo issues and some of the other things that we see with our defense. The President vetoed the defense authorization because of domestic spending issues. He wanted a dollar-for-dollar trade on domestic spending. While we can have the discussions on that, he vetoed the defense authorization. A lot of times people say, well, why don't you guys overturn the veto? This is a case where we did. Now, it wasn't the actual bill that he vetoed, but it is the identical language that we resent. And we saw a 91-3 vote in the Senate yesterday. The President announced yesterday, late afternoon, at least the White House did, that he will sign the bill. So that is a clear case, super majorities in both houses where we stuffed it back to the President. and now he's going to sign the defense authorization. So we'll take a win any way that we can get it. On more local politics, I always appreciated the support I got from this group when I was serving in the state senate. One of the things that I was known for there was fighting human trafficking and working on adoption reform. This month being Adoption Awareness Month and Foster Care Awareness Month and some of those things. But in the last couple of weeks, the developments are one of the guys that we were targeting, who was an attorney, a nefarious attorney, that was moving through, in essence, shopping children to the highest bidder from birth mothers. He was brought up finally, after years of investigation, he was finally brought up on charges. So that was a big win. Jason Nelson and I had been working with David Prager on that since 2009, 10, long time. So sometimes things take time to take effect, but that doesn't mean, that we should not do the fight. And people complain about maybe spills on the floor, and maybe at times we're a low water dam. Take the dam out of the way and see what it's going to look like. It'll go in completely the opposite direction. So those are a couple of updates. And really, with that, as I've talked to other groups, and we've done a lot of town halls and gotten out among a lot of different places in the district, rather than play whack-a-mole and try to figure out what it was you wanted to hear, I'll just take the questions. We'd be happy to do that, and we know who gets the first one, so go ahead.
Hey, this will be fun, man. It's like hanging out like a family and sitting around the fireplace. Okay, y'all line up right here for your questions. Now, we know that you no longer get to sign bills in Oklahoma. You're not going to set policy for us. But after all, you are a congressman. You represent a lot of people. How many do you represent?
735,000.
735,000 in a population in our state of only 3.8 million. That's a big chunk of our state. So when you speak, people listen. So we all want to find local solutions to major problems. Now, imagine this, if you will. In Mack versus Prince, and in a handful of other Supreme Court opinions, the Supreme Court has said the federal government cannot co-opt state agencies and tell them what to do and how to do it. There are agencies. Now, in the state of Oklahoma, we have a licensing board, and they determine what you have to do to get a license, to do things like work on elevators and electricity and be a doctor and things like that. Well, we have this idea that the state House and Senate could just statutorily change the rules and instruct the licensing board to not give any doctor a license who wants to perform abortions, elective abortions. Just say, well, you're not licensed in Oklahoma then. We can do that. We can legally do that. So our question is, since people listen to you, would you be willing to go on record and say, you know what, I think that's a good idea and we should pass the legislation and not license doctors who perform elective abortions? What do you say?
Well, one, I'm decidedly pro-life. 3 of my 5 children are adopted. I believe that when we take the life of the unborn, it's murder. I had the privilege to question Cecile Richards from Planned Parenthood and the Oversight and Government Reform Committee and ask her specifically some questions related to federal spending and federal dollars. I think states need to do whatever they can do to save life, whatever that is. And if we have a legal construct to do it, we ought to pursue it. The 10th Amendment is clear that those powers that have not been granted to the federal government are left to the states. And so this initiative, and I know Paul Blair's been working an awful lot, a lot of others with the reclaiming movement, I think that we need to continue to move in those directions and try to find the best way that we can save lives. I am that passionate about it. There will be debate, there will be legal battles over it, but if we are in our legal construct as states, I think we have to have the courage to do whatever we can to save lives.
We have over 800 pastors have signed a petition asking for this. We have several thousand citizens signed a petition asking for this. And we're still looking for a statewide leader who will clearly and explicitly, unequivocally say, yeah, we should do that. We should not allow doctors to abort babies in Oklahoma. That should be what we do statutorily. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm not going to play stump the chump here. What I would say is that the people of the state, they need to move among their lawmakers and get them to pass this in the legislature. If you can't go that route, then the beauty of Oklahoma law and Oklahoma politics is that it's not too terribly hard to get ballot initiatives where you can go through a legal process. There will be court challenges. We've seen on our marriage defense laws that we did ballot initiatives on. My first path would be to try to move it through legislative process because it has good standing in the courts when you do that. Second path would be through ballot initiative. All of that is in the hands of the people.
So if you were still in the Senate and Nathan Dahm and Anthony Sykes asked for your support, would you vote for it?
Well, I mean, I got 2 awards from this organization when I was in the state Senate, and I would probably be right there with them if I was standing there.
Well, probably is not a yes, but you're getting close.
I'm not in the state Senate anymore. I mean, you're asking me hypotheticals.
Yes, I am.
And I'll give you unhypotheticals. I'm pro-life. We need to do everything that we can. Government has certain basic functions. Protect life, protect liberty, protect property. We must do those things, we must promote those things, and we must prohibit the things that damage it. And we need to use every legal means that we have to save lives.
You're very close. Close enough. Thank you very much. The reason I'm harping on this is because he's right. It's up to we the people to get our legislature to pass it, okay? And we're trying hard to do that. But how do we get word out to the people that this option is even available to them? Right? Pastors, leaders, congressmen, governors, people who have a microphone that people listen to have to talk about it. And so we're trying to find people like you to say, this is a live option, people, get behind it. Because we've got the guys to run the bill, but is there the public support to get it passed? If people in your church don't know about this, you need to get them here, you need to talk to them about it, introduce them to me. More people need to know about this. All right, Bob, you're up.
Thanks, John. I like the flags, by the way. Congressman, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Congressman, I've been reading through the recently published Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP, and
5,000 pages.
Isn't that encouraging? 5,000 pages. Anybody else want to read it with me? But as I do, it appears from my read on it that there is a fair amount of power and authority being given to the World Trade Organization through this document, and it's ambiguously worded. Okay, which the way I see that, in all likelihood, I see a power grab that will likely result from this. And the WTO and probably other organizations will use it to exercise a much greater influence and control over all these various countries that are in the middle of doing this. So it makes me concerned about the idea of sovereignty and raises questions like, is this one step along our way of like the European Union started out initially as a trade agreement for steel and coal and how it worked into the whole union. So I'm curious, have you been able to begin to read it? I realize it's a big document. Got any initial perceptions from an early read on this? Where do you, because it has been published now for a few days and all, any take on that?
Sure. I led the fight against the Trade Promotional Authority, the TPA, against then Ways and Means Chairman Paul Ryan. I never made it about personalities, I made it about policy. Speaker Ryan and all Republicans, they agree that we need free trade, and there's good things with that. But we have to be careful in the constructs that we make. I was not willing to grant TPA to this president. I'm not necessarily against TPA as a construct under the right sets of circumstances, but in this one, you can't do trade separate from diplomacy, from securing your commerce militarily, or at least the threat of that. You have to secure your commerce, otherwise pirates raid your ships and you have nothing. This is as old as our nation. You also have to have good informational efforts. In other words, all the instruments of national power have to move on trade. It can't just be economic. And that's one of the dangers that we're making with some of this trade promotional authority that we're granting the president. I was not willing to give him the trust of the foreign policy skills to do these things. And because of that, I did not support granting President Obama TPA, and I also said on the floor of the House let's not kid ourselves. If this passes, it's not a matter of will we get a TPP under this president, it's a matter of when. And I had many of my colleagues that said, look, it's going to be a year and a half before anything will come out. And I said, no, we'll have it before the end of the year, or at least the proposal. You watch. Here we are. Now, I have not read the current agreement in its entirety. What I have done, and I posted on my Facebook page, the day that it came out and we were notified from the White House that the agreement had been released, I put a link on my Facebook page where you could go and you could read to your heart's content. If you have insomnia, it's recommended. However, I have read the August up to this point and went through a lot of the pieces of the TPP. There are many good things in it. There are some areas that I have some concern. One is this transnational partnership construct. And I had brought this up to leadership in the House. The transnational agreement basically would allow member states, once they've signed up for this, that they can alter the agreement as member states later, separate from doing a new treaty-like effort. I have real concerns with that, and many of my colleagues do, and that's going to be one of the big topic areas. I also had concern on the environmental pieces. I wanted to know what that looked like. How would that impact our businesses? If we sign up to something like that, will we have to make these draconian changes to how we do manufacturing, or how we do our energy, or how we do any number of other things? Very concerned about that. But when I read through the environmental chapters, they probably could have been better titled as conservation or something of that nature. They were talking about overfishing, over-timbering in certain areas, and I think we would all agree with that. So that's not, they were really kind of mislabeled. I did not see a lot of effort on global warming in that August agreement or on carbon emissions or any of that, because I was seeking and looking for that type of language. Didn't find it in the August agreement. I got to read the new one, and I hope you would join me in the efforts in pointing out things that you see, because if all of us, going back to the people, if all of us do this together, when we were looking at some of the earlier educational initiatives this year, I contacted the grassroots organizations and ROPE and other folks that I've worked with in the state before, and I said, look, here's the bill. It's 640 pages. I'm working my way through it. I'd like you guys to help me read and work through it and tell me your problem areas. They did. And we had Oklahomans rally, and we worked together, average citizens, moms, and they were talking to me, and the office worked together. I got 3 amendments put onto the measure that addressed the concerns. So that's people working together. I would ask for your same help with the TPP, but I will tell you this. At this point, because the President has the Trade Promotional Authority, and the subsequent presidents will also have that authority, it will be extended to whoever replaces President Obama. It's not a matter of if we will get a TPP, because we've granted them the authority to do it. I opposed it. We came 3 votes shy of defeating it. That toothpaste is out of the tube, and you have to realize that. So what we've got to be able to do at this point is how do we make sure that what is in that TPP does not violate sovereignty rights, does not put us on some weird ideological environmental agenda, doesn't harm our manufacturing, helps the American economy, and also strengthens our allies and partners in the Pacific without violating human rights. Do we really want Brunei to have an equal voice in the United States on human rights issues? I mean, they lop off feet in public spectacles, with Sharia law. That's not where we want to be. To address, Bob, the WTO portions, WTO acts in many regards as a standard bearer on these trade standards, human rights, and issues. So they do some good in that regard. I think the agreement itself is where we need to be concerned with the TPP. I have become good friends with Mike Moore, the current ambassador of New Zealand, former World Trade Organization head, former Prime Minister of New Zealand. He is a God-fearing man. He brings a whole basket of education things on how we can make the agreement better. And he's very dedicated to some of that as well, but he's also got the credentials to look at the other side. It's that kind of diligence that I just feel compelled to do that. You elected me to work hard in this office, and that's what I intend to do. So the TPP, I don't know how soon we're going to go. I talked to Speaker Ryan on the floor about it last week. I said I was pledged to try to make it the best possible agreement we could possibly make it as it moves forward. Not because he knew. In fact, I was head to head with him during the summer. But now the agreement's out. So we've got to work with what we have and make it the absolute best that we can now that it's on the floor. And I pledge to do that. I hope you'll join me in that effort and help. The links are out there. It is long, it is laborious to try to go through, and if there are areas of concern, please bring it to our office's attention. I welcome that kind of help. Thank you.
John, one quick follow-up.
Go ahead.
Congressman, how do you make it better if it can't be changed? You make that comment about making it better. How do you do that?
How do you make it better if it can't be changed?
When the TPA authority was granted to the president, one thing that Speaker Ryan did when he was Ways and Means Chairman was it wasn't a TPA like President Bush was granted or President Reagan was granted, or we've been using TPA authority all the way back to Nixon. Every president has used it since then. But we put conditions on it. And one of the really smart things that Ryan did, even though I wasn't willing to support it, even with these protective measures, is he said, if it does not meet this following list of things, we're not even going to let it out of committee. And that means it never gets an up or down vote on the floor. And unless we up or down vote it and pass it on the floor, then the president does not have the authority to enact it because it will not have approval of Congress. His authority is limited even under the TPA. Now, there's some risk there, but at least Ryan did put those things in. He's a budget guy. He is, he wants lower spending and these types of things, even though the press has attacked him. I mean, Christ himself could have run, and they wouldn't have liked his sandals or beard or whatever on that whole speaker's race. So all I can say is I'm glad that when he was Ways and Means Chairman, that when he put those things in, that now it's real easy for him just on a procedural move say, Mr. President, I'm sorry. You were granted the authority specifically under Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution on these powers granted by Congress. You have to follow what we said. And there is a pretty good tight list there. Now, that will be the fight. But we will use those things, that band of things that we said, Mr. President, you can if you abide by the following. If he doesn't even have to come to the floor. That's where the fight's going to be. That's what I predict.
All right, next question.
You did recently vote for the revised Defense Authorization Act. Unfortunately, there was $11 billion in there for the F-35. The F-35 has numerous problems with computer vulnerability. It has problems with weapons delivery accuracy. It has redesign of the fuel tanks. It has lightning protection problems, helmet display problems. It had problem with warm fuel. It has been 7 years behind at $167 billion over budget. If you compare the maintenance cost of an A-10, which is around $13,000 per hour, to an F-35, which is over $30,000 an hour, I think you would call it a FUBAR. So why would you vote to waste another $11 billion on the F-35?
I'm happy to take it. First off, your information is very dated. The helmet problems have all been fixed. Much of the development problems that you address are outdated. They have been addressed. It is a fighter that has been developing, okay? Part of the reason of the delays is because of Congress and because of the requirements of the nation's defense. For those of you that don't know, the F-35, and I'm not a pilot, I have called in airstrikes, and I'll take a Cessna or a Piper Cub if I need it, call them in. The F-35 is important because what they want was a uniform Tier 5 fighter that will service and serve in the country for the next 40 to 50 years. That's how long airframes last these days. Anyone working at Tinker knows that. You get an airframe in the inventory, you're going to have it around a while. So as they're developing the F-35 and they bring it in, they said, well, look, can we make this a single block joint strike fighter? Not just for the Air Force, but what if we put a tail hook on it and land it on a carrier? What if we make it with thrust vertical engines like a Harrier and we land it on the marine amphibious carriers that carry Marines around the country, around the world? And so, because they wanted this joint strike fighter concept, they had to make these adaptations and alterations. But the saving comes when you've got a single platform that can be modularly done, sharing the majority of its parts, where it's manufactured in conjunction with our English-speaking allies, and that's really all who's going to get it, with maybe the exception of Israel or some of our closest allies. But these fighters then will be in the inventory for 40 years, and if we don't do it, A-10, I've called in A-10 strikes, it's a great gun. It is a dated aircraft. The Wright Flyer was a good aircraft. We didn't need it in World War II. And that's about the same amount of time span you're talking here, by the way, 1903 to 1943. You have to move on. If you don't, Russia, China, other nations are going to be way beyond us, and they will be. So you can bite the bullet now, or we can be isolationists and say nothing's bad going to happen, and then we don't have the means for defense. I don't like the overruns, but to say that all of these problems still exist is not true. I've met General Welch. I've sat down in committee with him. I've gotten classified briefs. Maybe your information is more privileged than mine, but I disagree with your stats, sir. Thank you.
So, thanks for coming.
Hey, Ken, thank you.
Appreciate your service.
And
Yes,
yours,
sir. I got two questions. Clean air plan. Is there not anything Congress can do? It's going to amount to closing our coal plants down, coal generating plants, because it's going to make electricity go up a lot more than they say it's going to. Can Congress do anything about that? And will they?
And can the state of Oklahoma do anything if you have any ideas?
Sure. We are as concerned about these issues as you are, Ken, and the House has passed measures to prohibit these EPA overreaches, but until this president is out of office, I don't see it changing. You also have the thorny things of the cloture rule in the Senate with 60 votes. If we did not have that, then the president would have had it on his desk for these overreach. Now, what can we do in the interim? We passed the RAINS Act in the House, which basically says that if it has more than $100 million in impact, that they can't make a rule change without it being approved by Congress. That's just one example. That was successfully passed bipartisan fashion in the House. It's currently in the Senate. I don't know where it's going to go. The president has threatened veto if he gets it at his desk. Once again, we see that it's the administration largely responsible because of this ideological agenda he has with green energy. And we're not ready for those things to just cut off all of our petroleum and our coal and all of the fossil fuels and replace it with things that I think have as much environmental impact as what they're suggesting. Anyone been to the Arbuckles lately? I mean, it's awful looking down there. You've got these twirly-bird windmills everywhere destroying our beautiful sea to shining sea landscape, not to mention that these things across the country are whacking 1.5 million birds, 4,000 bald eagles, golden eagles, owls and shrikes, rare species of animals. Even the Sierra Club is now really taking a look at this renewable energy. That affects insect population, which more insects eats our crops, it affects our food supply. People are not thinking these renewables through. So we're trying to make those cases in committee, and are having some success with that, by the way. In the interim, I think that we are seeing the impact where people live, and whether you're a Democrat or Republican, when constituents have angry electric bills in their hands and they start going to people, we're going to see some of these rule changes stayed. We have had some examples of that. I don't know how much pain people will have to go through or whether we can survive another 13, 14 months under this president. I don't see things changing immediately between now and January of 2017, unfortunately.
We get, but in the meantime, these coal plants shut down, you can't get them started back.
It is very hard to do that. You lose the capacity, like our liquefaction plants for natural gas. When you lose one, it's harder to start one back up. But if there is economic incentive, one of the things, and I've asked to meet with the president himself on some trade issues based upon my recent trip to China. He wants to move a strategy toward the Pacific. I don't think that's necessarily wrong, but he has a propensity to try to do all of these different things and to improve China's climate violations and air quality. I was in Xi'an, China, burning my nose, burning my eyes, lungs. You couldn't see a quarter of a mile because of the air quality there. New York City has a 6 to 8 parts per billion air quality meter. Bad day would be 8. Xi'an had 320 when I was there on that meter. So that gives you an idea of the difference. I think one of the things that we as conservatives can do is play to the president saying, look, Mr. President, if you want to improve some things on climate, how about let us take our coal-fired plants, our natural gas that'll help run and technology combined, and we'll reduce the air quality, they'll have electricity, things will be a lot better. I think we can win on that argument. Got to get access to him, and I'm trying to make the attempt to do that.
We did pass a bill about that here in Oklahoma. The governor vetoed it, and she's going to do that on her own about refusing to meet the standard. So maybe she'll be able to do that. Second question, and I don't know, maybe I haven't read up on what happened, but why did we not investigate Hillary on the emails?
We actually are. The special committee under oversight of government performance, it's a select standalone committee on Benghazi. Trey Gowdy is the chairman of that. We wouldn't even have known about the emails had they not discovered these things through that committee. Now, they made a lot of hay about Hillary going up to the Hill, and it was a 10-hour meeting and all of that, and she got a lot of love from the press and all of that. Doesn't change a thing. We still have subpoena power. We still have congressional judiciary oversight. The committee's not going away. Trey Gowdy, if they think that some bad press report is going to dissuade him from continuing to investigate, they don't know Trey. He's going to continue to dig, and we have discovered a lot of things. Like I said on the radio this morning, setting the emails aside, which is bad because you've given up potentially classified, not potentially, they have given up classified information, which is why the FBI got involved. The FBI didn't get involved because they want to support some Republican presidential agenda. That's nonsense. They got involved because the law was broken. So it hasn't died. But set all of those things aside for a moment. You had an ambassador killed by terrorists. You had people trying to defend them that lost their lives. You had a consulate, or an outpost, really, from a consulate, from an embassy mission in Libya. The security posture had been noted as being inadequate, that the ambassador was in danger, it was not listened to, not adhered to. All of those things are still very much real and very much on the table. The committee takes time. Of course they're going to, because of the presidential politics that are involved now with Hillary running for president. Those are all real issues, and they will continue to go. You can imagine the difficulty it is for them to move quickly on that, because every procedure, every delay, every request for information, the ability to look at both sides and accommodate both parties has made this a very lengthy process. But that doesn't mean that we won't get to the bottom of it.
Senator, very much appreciate your service, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I have a question on the EPA, and then I have another question that's totally unrelated. The EPA, here last week, I was listening to our Secretary of Transportation, Gary Ridley, saying that the new Clean Waters Act is going to happen, period. That restricts farmers, of course, are going to have EPA clearance in order to put any kind of farm ponds. And on the county here, it means that we're possibly going to get 202 or 204 forms in order to be able to do any ditching or placing tin horns or culverts. Is Congress, I've heard that you are going to try to pin their ears back and get that rescinded. Is there anything?
We are trying. In fact, again, on these rules with the EPA, we are doing everything within House power that we can to prevent, that a hoof print would be considered a navigable water stream is just beyond me with these rules. It's terrible. I'm hearing the same thing from county commissioners. I'm hearing the same thing from people in the district, ranchers, people all over, businessmen. These are bad, bad rules. The president is pushing them. So you have the weight of the executive branch doing that. Because we can't affect it legislatively, although we've been successful in putting prohibitions in the House has done its job, we've been unsuccessful in getting those through the Senate. That only leaves us one place to go in the House, and that's the House Judiciary power. And we will be continuing to try to move on anything that we can through those judiciary powers to block, delay, to try to change these EPA rules. The other way that we can, and Tom Cole has been instrumental in getting some jabs in there very quietly in the spring on the appropriation process. He just quietly moved $100 million here or $100 million there, $400 million there, and before you know it, these agencies that thought that they were going to move out and do different things on their rule change, specific language in appropriation that says that no dollars could be used for that funding. That's how we can do it. And Tom Cole, I know people may have different opinions, and that was brilliant. And he just did it under the radar, and people never even knew that money got redirected or rerouted. So that was a big plus. I would tell you this, we're going to use every tool that we have in the House. I can't answer for the Senate. I wish I could. Personally, what I would do if I were in charge of the Senate, I'd get rid of the 60 cloture rule. It's not right that the minority party of 1/2 of 1/3 of government runs the government. The framers never intended it. You won't read that in Madison or Jefferson. You won't see it anywhere in the Federalist Papers. They never envisioned a stupid rule like that we imposed on ourselves in the early 1900s. And we need to get rid of it, but that's them. All we can do is our work in the House, and we have passed measures to prevent these rule changes. We'll see how far they go.
Thank you. I do have a second question. Go ahead.
To you, Mike, and to any other county commissioner that might be listening, again, this is Oklahoma. Oklahoma's a state. The states are higher than the United States. We told them the 17 things they could do. The EPA is not legal. It shouldn't even exist. I advise you don't obey anything they tell you to do, unless you want to.
Well, I can tell you that I do not want to, and I can assure you that these rules will not be followed in Logan County.
All right.
My second question has a lot of political controversy to it. Last year, State Representative John Echols presented about House Bill 2154 that had to do with cannabidiol, CBD for Dravet, and Lennox syndrome. It was a study.
What's English? What is this?
Okay. This.
Is it just a disease or something?
Oh, it's epilepsy. It's severe epilepsy, wherein these children will have as many as 400 to 500 seizures an hour, I believe, or maybe a day. But using CBD anecdotally, why those are reduced to maybe 1 a day. And of course, it's life-threatening. It sailed through the House 99-2. It was unanimous in the Senate. And it was for a study on this Dravet syndrome. Unfortunately, the study to be done through OU neurology cannot obtain the pure CBD because the company that would be supplying Insys Therapeutics has now said that the protocols are too high going through the DEA. And they have implored the DEA to reduce CBD from Schedule 1 to a Schedule 4. And I would like to see that go through Congress. Another item is concerning the same thing as PTSD. And there is a lady, Dr. Sisley, Susan Sisley, University of Arizona, who was able to make all the protocols, get it FDA protocols and such for this study using whole plant cannabis. Unfortunately, being an administrative kind of nightmare for University of Arizona, they fired her. But fortunately, in Colorado, they have $9 million of sales tax specifically for
Mike,
therapeutic
what's the
efficacy.
question from the Congress?
So what I would like to see is Dr. Volpa, who is NIDA director, and she implored that cannabis be rescheduled from Schedule 1 to a Schedule 2 so that these therapeutic activists can be actually studied. So I would like to see NIDA not be the sole source there at the University of Mississippi, because they're not able to provide what's needed for this therapeutic study. So would you support that, sir?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Maybe you do. Well,
I got the gist.
let me think out loud. We in Oklahoma want to investigate a drug that helps with epilepsy, but we can't because of federal regulations.
As well as PTSD.
Okay, so did y'all follow that? We want to investigate a drug, but we can't because of federal regulation. What can be done?
Well, and I did talk to Eccles when he was formulating the bill. I think there's no harm in having the studies. I think we do need to have the studies. I think that if we have things on certain narrowly defined medical issues, let's have that discussion. If they have merit, then let's move in the appropriate direction. That said, what I would not support is a path for legalization of marijuana. And I know that's not what you've asked for, but I'm just making that clear here. But as far as the studies go, I think that we need to have those discussions, we need to have those studies so that we can make informed votes on the medical aspects. There appears to be pretty conclusive evidence in some cases where there are some benefit for medical purposes, like epilepsy. Now, PTSD pieces, I'm not aware of those. But I don't think there's any harm in the state legislature to have those studies to make an informed decision, and I would have been supportive of having the study.
You would be supportive of rescheduling it as a schedule?
Now that I would have to, I'm kind of, with our host here, I would have, before I could commit on something I don't fully understand, I would want to see what that was. But in principle, it doesn't hurt to have a study, and if we have legitimate, sound scientific benefit, okay, then I think we go in the direction where that makes sense. But I'm not for creating some other path, nor did you suggest that here. For the record, I'm not. Unless we can make marijuana legal for all progressives, I think that would be beneficial to our country.
If the state of Oklahoma wants OU to study some form of pot, they should just tell the school to do it and not worry about what the federal drug laws or regulations are. Because look at the states already getting away with that. People are smoking it recreationally. Surely we can study it. We should just pass a statute. Okay, we have time for, I hope, 2 more questions. Don't anybody else line up.
No, we got Jim.
I'm not going to make the same mistake I did last time. We got millions of vets around us that are hurting. How would you rehabilitate our care for the veterans of America?
Well, I would start off by letting them be able to go to the doctor of their choice and then have it where, as I said to the High Noon Group earlier this week, I think the best way to reform Veterans Affairs care is get the VA out of health care providing. Let them be a health care administrator. That's not to disparage the dedicated folks, and I know many. I've written letters of recommendation. I've written letters of defense of people that work in the VA system. But it's broken in capital letters, and we're not going to fix it. The VA needs to be blasted out with dynamite. We need to make the VA Medicare or TRICARE, where they connect service providers with administrative repayment, and that's what they do. And then they provide headstones, and they provide all the other records benefits. If you can't get the records from our government, then you go to the Chinese embassy, and they can probably help. In the interim, I don't think that we can reform the medical pieces of the VA. They have shown themselves time and again huge wasters. You want to know the two biggest black holes of government waste in the country? Afghanistan and the VA. And that's not to say that the VA hates veterans or that Afghanistan, we're not trying to do good things in the world, we are. But that's where the waste occurs, and that's what we have to try to combat. And I've certainly taken shots at that with our Waste Watch. Every quarter we've hit both of those organizations because there's just so much to find there that is wasteful. So how do we get, look, if I'm a veteran, right now I have the choices. If I wanted to use the VA healthcare system, I probably could, not a chance. I am a military retiree, so I have TRICARE, and that allows me to, I go see a local doc that takes TRICARE, just like you would Medicare. If a doc takes Medicare, you can go to your doc. You know, I pay a co-payment. I pay co-payments for my pharmaceuticals. You know, if it's something a little more serious, maybe I pay a little bit more. But I have choices. I go see, I go do. The veterans with the VA, they've got a choice to go to some hospital that is bad, and billions of dollars being wasted. Denver VA, $350 million hospital. I mean, that's awful. For 192 beds, $350 million. You could build something enormous for that. But it gets better. Long delays. Now the cost is up to $1.4 billion. It's still not finished. You could have bought the 88-floor posh apartment living high-rise in downtown Manhattan, bought an apartment for all 192 beds that you would put in there, and have been cheaper than that hospital in Denver. That's the problem with the VA. Can't perform it. Tired of hearing their lies. We have to restructure it completely. That's my view.
Sounds a lot like museums in Oklahoma.
Thank you. Congressman, the evidence is coming out more and more that the United States, the intelligence agencies, Obama administration, our allies are behind various forms of the so-called Islamic radicals that have waged war on Syria right now. And the Russians have gotten involved and have started doing the job that Obama obviously had chosen not to do. And now they're talking about sending actual combat troops instead of Islamic paid mercenary proxy armies representing them. I'm just slightly concerned that a military confrontation with Russia and then China in the Middle East could result in World War III, and that might really upset our football season. Could you address that? Is there any sane approach to what's going on right now?
I appreciate that, Porter. In fact, you and I have discussed this issue before, and this administration has misread Russia at every turn. They've misread the Syrian situation. We had a couple options there that we might have been able to do. We've managed to do everything the opposite. The situation we have right now, I share your concerns. I was in a classified brief last week, without going into specific numbers and details. My Navy SEAL buddy, Ryan Zinke from Montana, he and I walked out of that brief not feeling good that the president had any clue what he was doing with the Syrian strategy. We are very concerned that if you introduce special operations forces in small teams on the ground, working with the Kurds or working with maybe some of these moderate rebel groups, then you get into issues. You know, we're complaining that the Russians aren't doing the airstrikes on the people we think that need it. So what do you do if you've got an American team with Kurds attacking an ISIS position, and then a Russian plane shows up and launches an attack on ISIS? Oops, sorry, we didn't mean to hit your special operations forces team down there on the ground. I mean, you're right, it will create a lot of potential for bad here. What can be done? I think the thing that we have to do is we have to quit isolating ourselves from Russia and from others, and we've got to focus purely on ISIS. And if we would do that, I think that we might be able to turn around some things that we could have done a year and a half ago. My own view on it, and I've been on the record on this before, even last year, what we should have done is said, look, Russia, whatever differences we have, we agree ISIS is bad. Barbarians, horrific people, which, by the way, you are correct that President Obama wanted to arm these people early on in, and I wrote personal letters as a private citizen condemning it because I had fought against some of these guys, saying we cannot arm these people. You know, they will use it for a lot of bad. Nevertheless, that's not what we have now. What we should have done was said, look, you start in Damascus, work your way to the Iraqi border. We'll start in Baghdad and work our way to the Iraq-Syria border. Whether or not that's with them advising Syrian troops and us advising Iraqi troops, but if we did it together, then we could say after that we'll figure out what a post-war Syria and a post-conflict Iraq looks like from there. That's essentially where we're left with now. Now that Russia has intervened, now that they're moving in certain directions, that is ultimately what will happen. We'll be left with a rump Assad state. They'll find some way, an exit plan, and then they'll figure out how to put what's left of that government in power. The moderates will probably sign up with some coalition, those rebel forces, and then hopefully ISIS will be diminished. I wish that I had a warm feeling about this president's ability to put any of those operations together. I don't. He is getting good advice. He's not listening to any of it. It is very disconcerting. We also see in Baghdad Russian influence. We see Iranian influence. These are all problems. But basically, you have to find a way to accommodate the Sunni Arab. They can't, in Iraq, be accommodated by turning to Prime Minister Abadi and saying, okay, include us in parliament, the government, and all that. The Shia, dominated by Iran now, who is in a strengthened position from this Iranian deal, this is all a problem. So the Sunnis have no place to go. And they can say, we don't really want to be terrorists, we don't want to sign up with ISIS, but you know, we can't turn to the Shia Arab for help. He's not going to help us. The Kurds decided to just take up arms and fight to defend their territory. We have been arming them quietly, which is good. Germans have done a lot of that, God bless them. We see the Turks backing off a little bit from some of their border conflict, and now you've got from Kirkuk all the way over to Homs, almost a continuous line of Kurds as a buffer between the Sunni Arab and ISIS and the Turkish border. That's a good development, but that hasn't necessarily been done because of any brilliance on the part of the president's team. That's been done because the Kurds just wanted to defend themselves. It is still a mess. We have to have a leader before we can have leadership. And I just don't see that happening in the short term from what I've heard so far. I wish I had cheerier news. But I do think by spring, we'll see the dynamic shift where ISIS will be diminished. I think that we'll try to move on Raqqa and take that support base away. It could have been done a year ago. We're just now getting around to it. And that combined, we'll see ISIS begin to wane, and that will create some positive outcomes. But it's been very ugly, and we've lost a lot of opportunity. And unfortunately, we've created millions of refugees and 250,000 dead.
And on that exciting note, we're going to call it quits today. Congressman, thank you for being here. Please give a hand for the charge.